Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Project Flux podcast. And today on the spotlight, we have a returning guest, Tom Haley, the managing director of Quantik. Some of you early listeners to Project Flux may remember Tom all the way back from episode 16. And this is coming around out in the 70s. So Tom was one of the early supporters and really helped us to grow Project Flux. So it honestly is a huge pleasure to welcome you back on the show, Tom. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, James. Thanks, Joshi. Nice to see you both again.
And in the meantime, we've been busy actually collaborating on other things. For anyone who reads our newsletter, you'll know that Tom did a guest blog for us a few months ago now. And then we've also contributed to a number of articles for your newsletter. So it's been a
Yeah,
great pleasure to do that. And I thought one of the things that we could do today, as well as just talk about the general what's happening, trying to keep pace and make sense of what's happening in the world of AI and project delivery, would be to just touch on some of those articles and some of the findings and some of our thoughts and ponderings as we go through this episode. But before we do that, as always, we really do want to start with what's keeping you up at night. And I know the answer to this question because in the preamble you were telling me your frustrations, so I'm sure this is where it's going to go. But for the sake of the listeners, do you want to tell us what's frustrating you at the moment, Tom?
so yeah, probably there's a couple of things. Definitely that is the current challenge, which is building our own GPT, Quantik GPT, where we are looking to curate a tool for our team to use to act as a QS assistant that will, pull from authoritative document sources, and I guess assist and support people in their day-to-day work, but a very specific document set rather than connecting it to the wider internet. So that's been a bit of a challenge. What seemed quite obvious and easy, as the more you dig down, the more you find, the more you have to fix. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I feel I'm so close yet so far away from actually nailing it. But I know when we do, it'll be a super useful and powerful tool for the team. So as we said, resilience, consistency, just keep going.
Sheer
That's the
bloody
that's
mindedness.
yeah, that's the order of the day, definitely.
Well, it's important because you
And
do
then
go down these rabbit holes, don't you? It's so easy to.
yeah, and you know you're on the right track, but when there's errors and bugs and issues, you kind of start doubting yourself, and then but
Yeah.
no, I know we're just keep going, just keep going. So yeah,
I
I
think with the
will
AI
I,
space
I
as
will
well,
nail
though,
it.
it's like it's actually one of the topics where you actually learn the more you do, as opposed to kind of learning from the theory.
Yeah, that I think that's one thing that I'm taking some solace in.
Yeah,
Or trying to convince myself that every one of these small issues being fixed is a small lesson and it's good experience. But yeah, it does. There are moments where you feel like the laptop needs to go out of the window. So
Don't do it.
far, so far, so good. So far, so good. It remains firmly on the desk.
Good. And I think there was that you were going to give us a second one there as well, I believe.
Yeah. Just growing a business, which is not necessarily sleepless nights. It's all positive stuff, but thinking about the future and where do you want to position yourself in the future? What type
Yeah.
of people do you need to support the future that you want to create? What type of clients do you want? And there's so many options and possibilities, but how do you narrow that down to the optimum and best path? So that's probably the bigger picture challenge, if you
Yeah.
like, whereas the GPT one's more of a day-to-day challenge.
And on that second one, have you sensed that, particularly since the last time we met, things have changed in that regard because of what's happening with technology? Or do you think the fundamental issues in terms of building a good business in this area are still exactly the same?
There's a lot of similarities. I guess buyers of services will always want the outcome to be done for the lowest price and the quickest time period. That will never change. The demand for services is still the same. Not really seeing any clients that are particularly choosing someone for or they're more tech savvy than another. That's not really featuring.
Okay.
And then in terms of the work that people do, I feel things are being trialed more, so I'm seeing and feeling like people are embracing it to some extent, but haven't yet sort of unleashed its full potential properly. So green shoots, I suppose, but probably nothing more than that at the moment.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's well. I say I'm surprised in some senses. I know the industry only too well, so I shouldn't be surprised. But it's taken longer in some senses. But you're right. There's definitely green shoots starting to happen in places. But before we get into kind of the articles and some of our deeper thoughts, obviously a long way back. I hit episode 16 now, so over a year, and we discussed quite a lot in the episodes, and we'll put the link in for anyone who wants to refer back to that, your views on AI at that point. How have your views on AI in construction evolved since then, if at all?
Probably conceptually very much the same, if not stronger. That the possibilities, the processing power of GPTs now, whereas, even a year ago, GPTs, they came up with answers, but the more complicated it got, the less effective it got. But we're seeing now new models come out, different models come out to address some of those challenges. And I think probably the rate of that progress, I don't know if it surprised me. I'm surprised by it, but I'm not surprised at the same time. Just how much the power of these tools has developed in such a short space of time. But I guess you shouldn't be surprised. So even more so, I believe that these tools can enhance the work that we do, both the quality of it and the time it takes to perform tasks, and move us more towards, I guess, for want of a better term, quality checking. So we're doing less of the processing of data and more of the controlling the inputs and then checking the outputs, and the bit in the middle is supported by tools. So probably stronger views and stronger beliefs.
Tom, just boiling down, the existing AI models we get, the latest GPT-5 models or Claude Sonnet and all these different things. How well do you think these models perform for quantity surveyors in their most basic form without any sort of fine tuning? Do you see a big difference now than you did last year?
I think as a second pair of eyes, or as a first drafter, GPT models are very, very effective in day-to-day, requirements. I think the ease at which you can interface with it, you can ask it questions, you can, it learns about you, your role, what you do, where you work. I think that's very effective. But when it comes to technical, if we went very hardcore quantity surveying, measurement, preparing a bill of quantities, I would say I'm minded to say we're nowhere near it. But then the progress that's been made in the last year, maybe we're closer than I.
So what would tell you that there's been, a big step in that capability? What would you expect to see from the AI at that point?
I think you'd want to. I think you'd want to be able to provide. I mean, stepping aside confidentiality concerns. So let's just say that this is a private GPT using GPT-5. What you would want to be able to do is say, here are the drawings, here are the specifications. I'd like an SMM7 compliant bill of quantities, prepare one. And it prepares you a first draft, and it comes back with, I couldn't understand this, and that piece of information was missing. So it gives you a bill of quantities, and it also gives you a list of queries, if you like, that the user needs to quality check the quantities and the descriptions, but at the same time, there's a series of queries where I either need to go into the documents myself and find it, or I need to go back to the client and ask for, this is a technical query for me to finish the bill of quantities. So, but I haven't seen the evidence that that's there yet.
Yep. That surprises me, because I thought it would be here by now, something like that, because we've seen things like, in terms of schedules, things like N-Plan Schedule Studios, that is effectively the GPT for schedules. And the fact that there isn't one for estimates, there's two kind of schools of thinking. There's the one that, it's just a matter of time and someone's going to create that vertical solution. The other side of me thinks that these generalized models are getting so good that, because if you talk to GPT-5 now, you can have a discussion with it and get a pretty good cost plan produced to NRM standards. So maybe we're searching for an answer that doesn't need to be built, because these generalized models are going to be able to do that first pass for you just as well.
Yeah, so maybe preparing structures of information and starting points. I do think it will I do think these tools will be able to perform those tasks or a large part of those tasks. But there's a lot of, I think, in a general AI tool where the AI is learning from anybody that's using it, there's a lot of, I don't know if I want a better term, pollution in what the GPT is learning.
Yeah.
In a custom GPT, I truly, and it's part of the reason we're developing one, I truly believe it's possible because you can create the process flows, you can feed back to it and tell it, look, you measured a wall as a window, or next time you do it, you need to make sure that, these are the parameters for measurement, or I believe that's possible and will produce high quality work. General GPTs, I want an estimate for a house refurb or a house extension. Give me a costs, probably, maybe for larger building types. But if you think about cost information that exists online, it's not similar to what businesses will have inside their organizations. So General GPT is going to pull from material websites. It's going to pull from, I don't know, operative rates that exist. It's going to pull from cost plan data that exists online. And there are some, but at the same time, some of that's licensed. So BCIS is licensed. Would a general GPT be able to read from licensed information? I'm not sure without you having both licenses. So I think you can get rules of thumb and general guides, not a valuation or a cost plan for something that you would give to a client and say, I put my name, my business's brand name behind that, because you can't see what sits behind it. I suppose you can ask it what assumptions it's made, what data it's used, and sort of test. If you think about evaluation, you test its robustness by understanding the process which it's gone through to get to the endpoint or the valuation. So it's possible. These things aren't insurmountable, but I can also see challenges with people just taking what's on the general GPT, and that's probably a big risk I think in the industry is people taking things and just running with them without really understanding the basis of what they've received.
Yeah, and I think that's probably happening. I mean, I don't know if you've played around with the agents, so things like ChatGPT Agent or I'm a big fan of Manus, and then Manus has got this new feature called wide research. So you can send it off to do, let's say, a cost plan as an example, and it will literally spawn a bunch of separate agents that will then go and do research and various things. So things like that, I think, bring that concept closer to home. But I do agree with you that you still need the expert to kind of validate it and make sure they're happy with it. So on that note, one of the things that you wrote, so you did a really great article for us on Project Flux, and you called it Unlocking Productivity in Construction. You talked about the fact that AI will augment QSs, not replace them. And I kind of flip between this. Some days I feel like, you're always going to need a QS in the process. And there's other days I just can't see it, like the way technology is moving. What do you think? Do you think we're always going to need a QS augmenting it, or
I think
eventually is it going to replace?
I think you're all, I think, or at least I hope in my career at the very least, that the skills will always be required. The core skills will always be required. Probably the evolution is the application of those skills. So if you think about 30 years ago, somebody who was good with a scale rule and a set of drawings was very effective. In a world where drawn information became digital, the application of those skills was no longer needed, but the skills themselves sort of transcended and transitioned. And I think where I see, if I look at what I'm doing at the moment, the skill is in curating the library, the skill is in curating the process flows for preparing a good quality valuation. And I think that's where what problem are you asking the GPT to solve? Because ultimately the GPT is, prompt engineering's getting better, and you maybe don't have to be as precise as you used to be, and it will read between the lines a little bit. But if you're not defining the problem that you want it to solve, then probably the answer you get won't sort of solve the problem. So I think the QS is still the QS skills are still going to be needed, but I think the way that you apply them in curating libraries, process flows, setting the right prompts, asking the right questions, I think that's where people with those skills now need to start thinking about upskilling themselves because if not, they will become the people with a scale rule, waiting for the drawings to come through, and what's this laptop with the drawing information on the screen, and what do I do with my ruler on the, I think that's the shift that we'll see in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I see it happening already in a lot of senses. So, the kind of AI powered QS is just able to do so much more. And there's a new skill emerging around this orchestration of agents, whether that's a GPT or something else. Much like, see, one thing about QS that I always thought was, it's a different skill being a good QS or being a manager, right? So you can have a QS who very much works on by themselves, not always able to manage a team of people. But I think where we're going, that skill of being able to manage agents, which is similar to managing people, because you've got to give it a brief, you've got to check it, etc. That's going to become really, really important. So there's this new skill that QSs are going to have of learning how to, I call it agent orchestrators.
Yeah. And the reason we need that skill is, a QS it's a strange profession in many ways, because we kind of, if we were sat if we were sort of in the middle of the circle, we kind of intersect with so many other professions, but we're not that profession. So whether it's finance or legal or engineering or project management or planning, so we are estimating, so we have to intersect with all those different professions, and the structure of the data that we get from those people, whether it's drawn information or finance information or contract information, we normally use the structure of information that's given to us by, that core profession. And then we sit in the middle of it and try and make it all, all make sense from a evaluation perspective or in presenting issues, so that sort of agent coordination, I suppose, sort of, similar to what we've always done, but just in a different environment, I guess. And that's going to be a challenge for people.
Definitely. And of course, what one thing is that obviously the QS profession doesn't actually exist everywhere, and we've got a lot of listeners in the US now and other parts of the world, and there's probably a lot of listeners thinking, well, what does a QS actually do? We should probably just clarify that for our American listeners. Like, what does a QS do, and why is it something that exists in the UK and it doesn't exist in the US?
Having worked all over the world, it's a philosophical question that I've always had to challenge myself with, and I'm sure I've had a couple of spiky engineers ask that question in a less polite way than you did there. But I think see it as we value construction works. We are specialists in valuing construction work, and that might be valuing it with concept information. That might be valuing a particular subcontractor payment application. So we have to use various data sources to prepare those valuations, because so many people rely on them, whether they're a financial institute that's looking to invest in a property, or it's a business that paying a subcontractor. They're relying on the quantity surveyor to value that correctly, not overpay them, ramifications if they do. And as part of that valuation work, we've then mocked up plenty of other tasks that we perform, whether it's risk analysis, contract administration, measuring, certainly on the contractor side, revenue and cost and what's driving that. So I suppose from its core and the measuring, it's spawned into other things that I've seen, in different jurisdictions. Engineers are quite capable of performing those tasks. In some ways, you'd probably encourage the engineer to perform some of those tasks. But it's in its simplest form. That's how I'd see it.
Tom, you've mentioned process flows, and James mentioned an orchestration of agents. When you refer to process flows, what's the context of that? Is that for what your teams use to help them build their estimates?
I guess it's you receive information and you receive instructions. So in its simplest form, somebody asks you to do something, and here's some documents. And then this is what we want at the end of that. And the process flow is the process of taking that instruction and delivering the output. And the process flow will depend upon the quality of the output required, sometimes how quick it needs to be done. Some of the judgments for us is based on the information we have. A lot of the time it's incomplete. So the process flow would define what you do with that, what assumptions and what judgments you make. So that for me is the process flow. You get something and you need to deliver something, and what's the bit in the middle.
So on that basis, do you have your agents working within those process flows, or do you have them creating what the process flow should be?
No, they would be, and I say manual, these are just ordinary process flows that exist between people in any office, probably in the world. But I think what the AI needs is a description of that process flow. I guess from an industry perspective, it's something that we're fairly bad at, because we don't analyze, let's just say the flow of design, and what's the optimum flow of design through from starting with a concept to delivering information to tender to delivering information for construction. It's not really mapped and optimized and written down. But I think for GPTs to be effective, that does need to be described. Maybe it'd know based on information that's available elsewhere. But a lot of the process flows that exist within the industry are probably tacit knowledge. So it's things that people do and they just know because that's how it's done, and it's not really written down or prescribed. It's just a common, understanding. That's, I get this and I give it to them and I sort this out, and then at the end this comes out. So it's probably that, and going back to productivity, that, removing waste or optimizing workflows or information process flows is probably the single biggest opportunity in the construction industry, without a shadow of a doubt.
It's interesting you say that, because you say about that tacit knowledge and people just kind of learn how to do things throughout their career, but it really shouldn't be, right? Because if it's tacit knowledge, you should be able to write it down and say, right, this is the process you're going to follow. I mean, I use the example of McDonald's, right? Before McDonald's, there was no kind of set way of delivering a burger, and they kind of revolutionized that industry. And there's loads of other examples where someone's come in and they've revolutionized the industry because they've taken that tacit knowledge, turned it into a workflow, optimized it. And now, of course, with AI, you can feed it the AI. Surely it's just a matter of time before someone takes that, turns it into something that just becomes productionized.
But this is the difference, though, because the difference between a human and an AI. The reason why I asked the question is because ideally, if you have a process flow which has been optimized to work within your human team, eventually you kind of want it to be collaborative with an AI system, so you can have an agentic structure which is delivering your process flow, of which you have humans and you have AI within the mix. Now, from a tacit knowledge perspective, we're saying that as humans, we kind of just pick things up as we go. That's, as much as that, can be frustrating because it should be able to be documented. Equally, that's what allows us to problem solve more than what AI can do. Because if you have an agentic system which is delivering against this and it falls over, it's not it might not have the ability, but it definitely won't have the autonomy to move without its bounds and find a new solution. Whereas with a human, no matter what level of the business you are in, either you can steer change yourself, or you can at least make the upper echelons aware that this needs to be changed. So you can find the solution and communicate that. But AI systems don't have that ability nor the autonomy to be able to deliver in a way that construction delivers.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I guess, we often talk about the uniqueness of construction projects in the sense of they're generally one-off projects. They are generally a different, set of designers on different schemes. So there's slightly different standards. Different clients have different expectations about what they want. And I guess that's where the human, as you say, makes judgments about, I don't have this, I have this. I know I've got to get this end result. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this assumption. I'm going to plug that gap. I'm going to do. Yeah, I don't. That's. I don't think I dare say irreplaceable, but very difficult to standardize and get a machine to follow. And as you say, make those autonomous judgments and deliver an output that's equal to what a human would do, because the client and you'll have ask questions of the GPT and you get it back and you go, that's way off what I asked you. That's so far away from what I asked. And that's from a client experience perspective. That's what clients would do. They give, that's just not what I know I didn't specifically ask. I know I wasn't clear about what I asked you for, but that's not what I wanted.
And this is cool because we said, I said to James, I think an indicator of AGI would be when the quality of your prompt doesn't really matter. It's when
Yeah.
it's when you go to someone who's an expert and you say to them, you give them the most vague thing and say, build me this. They should be able to build it to you. You don't need to say, can you pretend you're an expert in RSCS? And you don't need to do that. I should be able to just work off your initial demand, and actually you should be able to actually work off without you even needing to ask it. It should be able to predetermine what needs to be done. But
or at least ask the question if it's so vague. Rather, ask if there's something which is they can't give an answer because you've been too vague. Ask the question, and it's starting to get better at doing that, I think.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just feel like is our industry simply is it ready or is it willing to adopt these tools at the scale needed? It sometimes feels like, as ever in the construction industry, we're very slow to adopt, and like you said, green shoots, but it still feels quite slow.
There's definitely I feel a pull from people that see the opportunity and the benefit and want to work in a different way. So I see huge amounts of enthusiasm from
That's good.
individuals and huge amounts of enthusiasm from businesses, because why wouldn't you want to do something more efficiently, and why wouldn't you want to save yourself time on a task? Like, I don't think you're going to find a person in the world that says, no, I want to do it the long way around all the time. And I don't,
Oh, well, if there was that person exist, it would be a QS.
Yeah, it would, yeah. And we can probably name a few from our prior experience who do operate like that. But the majority of people want, it's part of a human is to sort of that search of improvement. But it comes down to skills, and, it comes back to skills and education, really. And not necessarily access to it, because you could self-learn, you could, there's various things you can do. There's then time to do it. That's probably the hardest thing. I mean, I'm running my own company. I can dedicate time to it without anybody, standing over me saying, what are you doing? And why aren't you, delivering whatever? Why are you messing about with that computer? Just,
Yeah.
So a lot of people probably, in an industry that's time poor, how do you generate the time to make the improvement in your own skills to unlock the potential? So I think that's always going to be the biggest barrier. Yeah. And businesses, I guess, some businesses, right, I want AI. What do you want it for? What do you want to achieve? I don't know. I just want it because everybody else does, and I want it to be more productive. All right, well, there's many different tools, there's many different options. So, it's all getting a bit too complicated now.
Yeah.
We'll put it on the shelf. So I think businesses having an AI strategy, I've not really seen that. Like, how does it form part of that business's strategy? And
it's very haphazard at the moment, isn't it? It's like,
yeah,
put some AI on it without some real thought, a strategic kind of thought about why do you want to do it and what's the outcome. I don't see much of that. But
do you think there's enough time in between projects for people to familiarize themselves with the tech? Because if there isn't, then you're just never going to find. Then the inertia will always be there.
Always, yeah. I mean, as an industry, it's probably one of the worst things about the industry is the expectation to, work long hours and not just working long hours, performing productive and value add work. A lot of it's down to inefficiency of others. You've received really poor information, you're having to fix it up. Yeah, it's a bit chicken and egg, really. And it, won't go down the mental health route, but that's a serious issue as well in the industry. So I think that will always be the challenge, and those that find a way to create the time and invest the time without disrupting business operations are the ones that are going to success. But
yeah,
I'm not sure who they are. If I look around at the bigger companies.
I think it's you inevitably have to invest some of your own time, and the reason that's important is because learning how to use these tools, of course, it's great for work and understanding artificial intelligence, but actually, I think it's a life skill.
Yeah.
Because whatever you learn, you can apply to anything. And it's not like you come home from work and say, that's it, all my AI skills are. You'll use it, to help you with your own finances. You'll use it to plan your holiday. You'll use it to, deal with what I'm doing at the moment, sending my son off to university and all the ramifications of that. There's so many use cases. So I think people have got to stop thinking this is only something I'll do in my work time. I haven't got time in between projects, therefore I'm not going to do it. That's misguided.
And your children as well, they are going to grow up in a world where this is
Mm.
this is like
Yeah,
Outlook, this is like email.
yeah,
These are integrated in what they do, and understanding it and how it applies in the workplace. My 10-year-old daughter, for some reason, is fascinated by it. So every now and again, we'll talk about it, and she's keen to learn. And I can't really engage in those discussions if I'm not learning about it,
yeah,
or
yeah.
or prepare your children for the world of work as it will be if you're completely ignorant to it. So even if people can't find time for themselves, find the time to learn, because that is the world of work that, or even school and university.
Life.
It's here, it's now.
Yeah,
I find this bit like, incredibly compelling. Is we are effectively pathfinding the future of way our lives will be lived for our children. And if enough people don't care about it and the change doesn't materialize, well, there's graver problems at risk, right? So you look at
societal
civilization
problems.
collapse and all of these things. Like, the quality of life needs to improve holistically. Just knowing that is weird, because it drives me to be like, oh, I have to be able to implement something and make a change in my industry, because it's going to trickle down to what my kids are going to be doing. But people who don't have that kind of frame of mind, and I guess because they're busy, or they've got other pressures, but it creates a later order of consequence which needs to be faced by someone.
Yeah,
Although your child might not be successful in the world of work, if that's or as successful. So a child that is using these tools and understands these tools is not, you would place a bet is going to go further than someone that doesn't in the next generation. So I think as a father, if your child isn't sort of work ready by understanding these things, then
yeah,
they're going to find it hard to succeed in life. I feel it's going to be that,
yeah. I agree.
it will literally be like using a computer,
Yeah.
25, 30 years ago. If a child entered the world of work and couldn't use a computer, that hampered their progress. But,
Mm.
the child that went in and could use a computer and could do the basics, they probably were more successful, or at least equipped for work.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
on this point, sorry, James, but one more point here is this is if you're banking on AI and the progression of AI being a lot more reserved. So it just does become a tool, a valuable tool as it is, but it will just be a tool where it augments what we do and we'll still need to work. That's one level of achievement. If things shift beyond that, and then we move to a place where we might not need to work, that's also a different conversation to be had. But just falling back on that more reserved aspiration, which is actually the more likely one, I would imagine, with the way these things are currently being built, that's still huge change. It's
yeah.
massive. So like that's more of a
Huge.
certainty. So I
Yeah.
completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah,
And then
it
if you
is
think back
it's
to,
huge.
I like comparing either the birth of computers or the internet's another good example. You've got to hedge your bets, right? Because if you go back to like the late 80s, early 90s, when the internet was first emerging, there's a lot of things that we now use that you probably couldn't have predicted, like things like dating apps or Uber Eats. I don't think anyone could have predicted, oh yeah, we're going to use an app to get someone to deliver food to your house. And it'll be the same with AI. We're not going to predict, we're not going to be right about everything. That's a certainty. But if you hedge your bets and you get stuck in, whether that's the world of work, you're going to be better off,
Yeah.
because there are certain things that we did predict and they have come to pass. So that's the way I look at it. And that's what I say to my children, just get stuck in, because it's going to put you in a better position.
It's here to stay, and it's only
Mm,
going to become more prevalent. I
mm,
mean,
mm.
another good example there is the iPhone. Who knew that we'd need a phone to do everything for us beyond just
It's
calling and text messaging? Who knew that we needed a phone to, no, I mean, obviously somebody saw a vision there, Mr. Jobs, and transformed it, but we didn't really know that we needed it, but
Yeah, exactly.
it's
it's
there.
funny you mention it. It's funny you mention it, because I just watched the BlackBerry film, and I was
Oh, I'd
watching
have
how
got to
BlackBerry.
watch that.
BlackBerry, yeah,
Yeah,
that.
I literally watched the film recently, and
I've got
how
to
it
see
came
that.
about, and now how Mike Lazaridis actually changed the way servers and
Is that the one on Netflix, Yoshi?
yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Craig Glenn Howerton plays a good role in it. But in it, you then see the collapse of BlackBerry and how they were late to adopting screen displays, and you hear
Mm.
Mike Lazaridis, the main engineer, one of the founders, go into watching the TV, and now you hear Steve Jobs doing his talk where he goes email, iPod and something, and he goes, "Are you getting it? Are you getting it?" And you hear the clang, you hear it just drop, right? He then goes into the ball. He goes, "Oh, I forgot the company. I forgot the telecoms company, right?" They then go in and he presents them the BlackBerry, and he says, "It's got buttons on it." And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Did you not see the iPhone thing? We're not doing, but we don't care about buttons anymore." And he was like, "No, this is ridiculous. It's never going to work. You have to have buttons. It's the BlackBerry thing." Anyway, you skip
And
forward.
people said that's true. People said that. I remember when the iPhone came out, like friends of mine, like, why would I want one of those? I need buttons.
Yeah. So you take that 43% market share of the phone market to zero by 2008.
It's mad.
Just like that.
And someone is going to find a way to use AI in a transformative way like that and completely zero an established business or industry or player. It might have happened already, but is 100% going to happen.
And Tom, when they tried to adopt it late on, so they then panicked when they were in front of Verizon. They said, "Oh, actually, we've got a concept in 3 weeks, right?" They built millions of this unit, and this was BlackBerry Storm that came out. They got it.
I remember that. Yeah.
And of the BlackBerry Storm, which was the on-screen display because they had to follow Apple, because they were late adopters, I think it was near every single unit of BlackBerry Storm was returned because it was buggy.
That's bad, and then that's the consequence, and it will, no doubt, that there will be a transformational point. It's probably, I don't think it's there yet, or I haven't seen it, but something's going to be disrupted, and it will be big. No doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt. It happens time and time again. If history teaches us anything, it's that we've got to be ready for this. And I think that's why we do this, is just to get people prepared. But it's been such a fascinating conversation. We haven't really had a chance to talk about the second paper, but we will we'll put it in the show notes. We kind of have, because we talked, that was all about current versus future states of QS. So we kind of have in the conversations we've had, but we'll put the link to that anyway, because there are a couple of really interesting pieces. But before we finish, I just want to talk to you about some kind of like reflection, really. So outside of work, Tom, what's a habit, mindset, or practice that helps you stay sharp?
Just always learning, always being hungry to learn. Education being, the cornerstone of everything. And education is not just formal qualifications; it is just reading articles, staying up to date. It's free, a lot of it, and there's no reason why not. So I think, and no matter what age you are, what level you're at, always realizing that there's more to learn. My GPT example, which I have shared with the team, because I want them to see that, they see the sort of perfect quantity surveying work, and they think, God, he's, and then they look at me struggling with that, and I'm like, look, this is just life, no matter what stage of your life you're at, there's always something that you don't know and that you need to know and you need to get better at. So I think having that mentality, allows you to stay sharp and stay ahead or stay at the forefront.
Very good advice.
And Tom, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing instead?
Well, as a young boy, I always wanted to play for Leeds United, so that would be that would be my boyhood answer. But clearly, there's
still a chance. You might.
There's still a chance.
Might need you to stay in the Premier League.
I am waiting for the call. I'm still, my kids ask me why I've never played for them, and I'm like, look, you've got a lot to learn about life. These things are very difficult, and I don't think my body's, no longer in a condition to play top level football. So that would be my, boyhood. But I think it sounds a bit of I don't know if it is a cliche answer, but I genuinely mean it. I enjoy what I do. I don't particularly want to do anything else. I like what I do. I like what, the interest that I have, the work role that I have, the business that I'm building. So in that, from that perspective, I'm very content. I suppose it's a bit of a boring answer, and some
not
people
at all.
be saying, surely you want to be on the golf course and so, or you want to be here. But I'd struggle very much in a slow pace.
But I think that shines through, Tom. I think that's why you're doing what you're doing, and you're pushing the industry. I think you need to have some kind of passion and a mission for what you're doing to be able to do things like this. So, we really thank you. And it's great to have people like you on the show, because you are looking at it from a different perspective. So I don't think it's a strange answer at all. And I would echo what you say, actually. But believe it or not, we've come to the end of the podcast already. So I think I was just doing some calculations. If the same lapse of time until the next one, we'll have you on again in around episode 124.
It'll come around quicker than you know it.
I know. We'll remember to have a laugh about it and see whether we've reached AGI then. But before you go, where can people find out more about Quantik and more about yourself?
Definitely online, so website, LinkedIn. We run a monthly webinar, which is very quantity surveying related. We publish fortnightly articles now, which cover a range of topics, quantity surveying related. And, add me on LinkedIn, follow the company and keep in touch. Anyone's welcome, no matter
Brilliant.
what profession or what they do.
Awesome. So we'll put all those, anyone interested in following Tom and finding out more about the webinars and the newsletter, we'll put those links in the show notes so you can follow. And all that remains to be said is just thank you again, Tom, for spending some time with us. You were one of the first people that gave up some of your time to talk to us. So we were very grateful then, as we are now. And as I said, looking forward to episode 124.
Yeah, thank you both for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom.
Project Flux is here.
That's a wrap for today's episode. But before you go, exciting news. Project Flux is teaming up with Project Management Global to bring you the latest in AI-driven project delivery and essential management insights. Through this partnership, expect weekly AI insights, practical tools, and expert thought leadership, ensuring you stay ahead in the evolving project landscape. Stay tuned for exclusive content, joint research, and strategies to supercharge your project outcomes. You can learn more at www.pm-global.co.uk and be part of the future of project management. See you later.
Project Flux is here.
Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. For anyone interested in looking at Construct AI, the link's in our show notes. There's a free tier that you can play around with. Yoshi and I have been using it for a good year since it was originally launched, and we get a huge amount of value out of it. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to go onto the Construct AI site and have a play around.
Cool. And guys, before we sign off, please don't forget to share, follow, and like all of our stuff. So that helps us to engage with you and understand a bit more about what you want so we can bring it to your doorstep as early as possible.
See you later, everyone.